So thank you all for coming back from break, being almost on time, and demonstrating some respect for us. So thank you for that. Now we're going to get into escalation and de-escalation, and thinking about proactive strategies that have failed. So we've done all of the things from this morning. We've tried doing some prevention techniques. We've tried doing our teaching techniques. We have our reinforcement, but the reality is we're going to wave a magic wand and the behavior is never going to happen again and it's going to be perfect. I wish I could say we could do that. We're going to try to minimize behaviors from occurring.
No magic wands.
No. They're still going to happen. So what happens when behaviors happen? And that's what we're going to be moving into. So we're going to look at this scenario. I'm going to read it out loud. After we've gone through it all, I want you to first just stop and think and say, like, what are your initial reactions? And then I'm going to guide us through a couple questions. So here's the teacher. Jason, please turn in your assignment. What assignment? The assignment you didn't finish during class. I finished it. Great, please turn it in now. I don't have it with me now. You have a choice. Turn it in now or do it again. You never believe me. I guess you've made the choice to do it again. Make me. That's disrespect. Go to the office. F you. The teacher moves closer and puts her hand on Jason's shoulder. He pulls away, glares, and raises his fist if to strike. So just take a stop and think moment. I want you to look over this interaction. Again, we're going to start with adult behavior. So we don't have control over Jason's reactions. So looking at the teacher behavior specifically. How did the teacher respond? What changes could have been made?
We have asked where it is, like found out where it is, and maybe giving them a chance instead of going right to, yeah, great, please turn it in now, and then you have to go right to your choice.
So that interaction right there, great, please turn it in now. Jason says, I don't have it with me now. You would have stopped instead of saying you have a choice, turn it in or do it again.
Trying to figure out where it is. If he said he did it, why do we have to assume he's, you know?
Yep, so his statement is, you never believe me? Well, the teacher reaction almost reinforces some of that behavior, so maybe asking, where is it? Is there another time you can turn it in?
He's clearly had a hard time in the past. Why would you?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not acknowledged when he said you never believe me, that he feels that way.
So he made a pretty bold statement there about not being believed, and that feeling wasn't acknowledged, so she went into the I guess you've made the choice to do it again. He heightens that with the make me. So we see the escalation happening, right? Like
It's an example. It's a real life.
Yep.
She's got to stop here, and she bit herself in the there. Excuse my language, but
Yep.
It's threatening.
getting close and then the hand on him. I mean, that's you got to walk 10 feet away at that point.
Yep. So he highly escalated there with the FU, and then you're saying almost really provokes some behavior by moving in closer, putting hands on. I think I learned this in undergrad. Whenever we touch a student, that typically leads to greater escalation. So we have to be very careful with touch and even proximity. So we talked about when we went through the 10 behavior management strategies that sometimes proximity can help get a student on track. When they are escalated, proximity can actually escalate behavior. So you are exactly right there of needing to move back possibly from that situation. So you identified at least 3 places where interactions could have changed. Adult interactions could have changed. So thinking again about what do we do as adults to manage behavior. The other piece that I just want to highlight from this example is that we're missing some information here, right? We don't see body language. We don't exactly know what Jason's need or function of behavior is here. We don't know what the teacher's body language, facial expression, positioning was in the classroom. Is there peers around? So there's information missing from this scenario that would help us better, God bless you, intervene. So I think I just wanted to highlight some of that. But also, you guys have already identified areas where you can intervene. I might go back to this example as we talk about the different phases of escalation, because I think we see it clearly here, how Jason is escalating. That he didn't go straight from turning in the assignment to striking with a fist. It took some time to get there, so recognizing those signs of escalation. When we look at escalating behavior and responding to behavior, we have to think there's many folks this can happen with. And I think in classrooms, you see student-to-student behavior. You see sometimes a little fight or a little tattle on me turns into a big argument. How are we as adults reacting to students? How do we respond to each other as teachers to teachers? Parent and student or child relationships, that we talked when we did that assignment, looking at the student in your classroom, thinking about some of the maybe how behaviors handled at home and what that looks like here at school. So we need to have kind of a greater understanding of, these are all learned patterns. So when we talked about, again this morning, that behavior's learned, it's lawful, that it serves a function, that it's escalated through successful interactions. So this behavior's worked before. So the student has gotten out of math tests. Jason has been sent to the office and not turned in his assignment. So looking at that, this is a pattern of relationships and a pattern of interactions that leads to behavior. So where do we step in, and what is our role? And it's changed through this instructional approach. So that teaching piece is really important, and how we change adult behavior is going to make the biggest difference. So you just saw this, so I'm just going to quickly, again, look at this, that it serves two functions. It's important, again, today's message, understanding the why is really important. We're not going to get right every single time, but trying to figure it out helps us be able to react much more appropriately. So, there's a few things that are really important when looking at escalating behavior. If we can intervene early, we're going to make our biggest bang for our buck. Once escalation has happened, and we're going to go through the 7 phases in a moment, there's certain phases that once you get there, there's not much you can do about it. But if we can catch it early and do some of those prevention, early intervention techniques, we have much better success of de-escalating behavior. Also looking at our environmental factors. What can we change in our classroom to change how the student is responding? Anybody have some ideas of what could be some environmental factors that can be manipulated? Seating arrangements. Schedule. So like where you schedule challenging tasks, assignments, things like that.
How you break up.
Visuals, like of expected behavior in your reinforcement system.
Yep. Visual
Class.
prompts.
When you put class together,
Yep.
what do you call it, roster?
Yep.
Posting the agenda for the day, reviewing it with the class, so
Routines,
everyone understands. the
structures.
routines, yeah. Having
Nice.
routines of passing out papers.
Yep.
Making sure the
Don't
students
change.
know those
Yeah.
routines, right?
So this is probably all sounding a little bit like we're on repeat. The importance of really those embedding those 10 classroom-based management strategies throughout your day, throughout your year, and being really intentional about how you're setting your classroom up for success. The other piece that we talked about this morning is replacement behaviors. I mentioned that they need to serve the same function. Really important that if a student is looking to avoid a task, whatever we give as a replacement behavior still allows that avoidance in a structured way. Same thing with attention seeking, that they're still going to get attention with that replacement behavior in an appropriate way. It's also the biggest piece behind replacement behavior is that they are explicitly taught to the student. So I mentioned how sometimes we assume that a student knows how to take a break. We need to actually teach that, reinforce that. It needs to be an explicit instruction. So here is the escalation, de-escalation model. Again, you'll see kind of time across the axis and behavior intensity. There are 7 phases. I would say that I would love if it looked this pretty with students. I don't think anything is really in a linear, natural flow, that this is all going to be individualized based on the students that you're working with. Typically, there are 7 phases, and students might go through some much quicker than others. So being able to recognize signs, symptoms that go along with each of these, but also students can move from one phase to another without it being in a natural flow. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. We're going to start with the calm. I heard the calm before the storm.
I love it.
So what does calm look like in students?
It depends on the
Work, hands and feet to themselves.
Normalcy in our eyes, I guess. This is what we
What's
expect.
Engaged, that they're demonstrating expected behaviors.
They're doing what they should be doing. They're doing what they're asked.
They're on task. All right, all of those things. The student's cooperative, they might be accepting feedback, following directions, they might be able to set some goals, ignore distraction, accept praise, on task, following the expectations, initiating those appropriate behaviors. So the student is calm. This is where prevention, really important. So going back to this morning when Missy talked about our antecedents of behavior, thinking about what were those prevention techniques that you were going to do. Now being really intentional and ensuring that you are following through with all of those prevention techniques that set the student up for success. Because if we can get them on track now, much more easier to keep them on track. So again, we're going to be assessing that problem behavior, looking at those antecedents and those triggers. We're going to ensure that we're putting those prevention strategies in place. We're going to ensure that the student has high rates of success. So I'm going to use your example of your student. They're writing their name on their paper. We're going to be reinforcing and making sure that's successful. The math test is too long. We're going to give them 2 problems to start. So we want to set them up for success at this phase. Really important to think about that and using that reinforcement system. So ensuring that the acknowledgement system is being used at high rates. And then this came up in a discussion over break, looking at teaching those social skills. So not only teaching our expectations, and I know, I'm looking at both of you here, that I've heard second step mentioned a few times, and I know it's not being done universally currently, right?
No.
So what can the classroom teacher maybe do to embed some of these strategies in their own classrooms? Are we teaching problem-solving techniques as a routine? Are we doing some relaxation strategies like deep breathing exercises or self-management? Am I in tune with my own body cues? So for your student, when we talked about stamina and gym as being a place that the student likes to go and being physical, could we maybe built in 20-minute movement breaks for the whole class and ensuring he's perfect? So you're already on board there.
Yeah.
But ensuring that we're teaching those skills explicitly to the students.
And I think that's the piece that we have to look at, is that fidelity across all classrooms, and are all teachers doing some of those pieces, and what are we doing within that core tier 1 instruction to teach all students about the problem solving and the relaxation strategies, and how are we incorporating that within our classroom setting. And so it's going to look different in kindergarten as it will in 6th grade, but how are we getting all of our teachers on board with that piece?
And that's where setting up for a rollout next year is going to be really important, because the teaching the expectations is the first piece, but ensuring that it's becoming more than just our September rollout of it. And this is a piece too during the calm phase where that prompting and praising is really important. So communicating those positive expectations, telling them explicitly what you want to be seeing, praising them during all of those interactions. So if we could keep them here, here's some strategies to keep them here. Unfortunately, sometimes things happen. So let's start moving up the train. A trigger. Anybody give me an example of what might be a trigger for some students?
Kid looks at him the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Complete this assignment.
Yep.
They
Asked to
don't
do a
want-
demand.
They don't want to do the work, or the work is, they don't know how to do it.
Yep.
I mean, I know it sounds silly, and I'm not trying to be funny. Like, some kids like their pencil breaks, and it's like
That's
the
a trigger.
biggest thing. And triggers, I think, are, to me, little. Something
Yeah.
little. It
It's
doesn't
usually
have-
something very little.
something's very little. I
Yeah.
mean, I
But
see
to them,
kids-
it's not little.
Right.
That's the key.
So going back to this morning,
Yeah.
trigger, antecedent go hand
Right.
in hand. And I think what we've all brought up here just from your examples is that it can be different for every student. So thinking
Right.
about the individuality of each student and
Yeah.
knowing them, having a relationship and being able to identify their personal triggers or antecedents is really important. So I think you guys
Well, no,
will
I mean,
teach
even
some of
if
this for me.
Some kids like it, and again, the same way it depends on our moods, it depends on their moods too. There's some kids that like you say, you don't know what happened prior to them getting on the bus,
Mhm.
and for the most part, it's a good classroom environment. But there could be something on their desk, and they and all like, what's the problem? His paper was on my desk, and 9 out of 10 times that's not a problem, but today that's the trigger.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So the important piece here is being able to cue into that trigger. So is it noticing that the student's tone of voice is different? Did he walk into the classroom a little bit differently? So this is where adult behavior, we need to be mindful and being on kind of cue for that could be a trigger for that student. How am I going to intervene right now to that trigger
Right.
before we go even further up our escalation cycle. So thinking about what this